Jerry Burg, and I live on Anderson, and the reason why I live on Anderson is that my grandfather emigrated from Sweden and worked his way west, was a molder for Atlas Foundry, and somewhere or another met a salesman of property for Anderson Island. He bought and homesteaded out here on the island that in 1889, the same year of the Washington became a state. He was into farming and so on. He this property where we are by the ferry dock was all wooded, and he, I'm sure, traded wood for lumber and so on. A curious thing is, when I was a young child, why he had one more tree, and one of the 4th of July celebrations was they go out and blast a stump of a tree that had felled. Anyway, that's how I got to Anderson Island, because my father had taken work in Chehalis, and was in the, he helped with the bed boy school in Chehalis, at the training school they called it, and met my mother there, and the Depression hit about the time they were married, and I arrived in 1930 with my father having no job. As most young folks did, they came home to Papa. Well, my dad did the same thing. In the meantime, grandfather, I think, was a very social person and a talkative person. I didn't know that, but anyway, he became acquainted with Mr. C.B. Hopkins, who was a marshal from Seattle, from Spokane, and in his conversations with transporting Hopkins back and forth to the new penitentiary on McNeil Island, he acquainted Mr. Hopkins with the island, and he was Mr. Hopkins, I'm sure, was intrigued by the fact that we have 2 lakes here. So Hopkins bought a lot of property between the 2 lakes. Then, as the Depression hit, with negotiations with Mr. Hopkins, Dad became the caretaker of Hopkins Ranch, and so that's how I became involved with Anderson Island. Now, on that ranch, we had a big hayfield, and in 1933, we just started aviation around here. We had an airplane make a forced landing in our hayfield. And so I, of course, being a young kid, and Dad took me along while they were working on the airplane. And set me on the wing. They got the engine started, and it was awfully loud, so I cried, and that's about the end of all I remember. However, I was stung, bitten by the airplane bug. I had airplane toys. Later in school and things like that, I made model airplanes, U-control with motors. And then graduated from high school and went to Central University, Washington, it's not Central Washington University, to get away from home, not because I didn't like the home, but I wanted to have parental separation. And then came back to the University of Washington, 4 years in ROTC. From ROTC, I was accepted for flying training, which I was very happy for. And my first primary training was at Hondo, Texas, which was a contract primary flying school. We had civilian instructors, and then on to basic training, which was where I took single engine training. We had an option of single twin, multi-engine, and I, of course, took single engine. I went up to Big Spring, Texas for basic training. Flew the T-28 and the T-33, graduated from there, and then went on to Perrin for advanced training and intercept training. My job there was to act as a target for the interceptors. From there, quite luckily, we were reassigned to, my first duty assignment was to first install Germany, which was a NATO school for NATO members, and their pilots were upgraded or retrained in jet flying. We had students from Norway, from Greece, and Iran, and Pakistan, as I recall, and a few others. Anyway, it was a NATO training base, and we flew the T-birds, and like I say, I was the instructor. And from there, the interesting thing was that I was an instructor pilot in the first German training upgrade. They just gotten their sovereignty, and so I was and there was 8 of us instructors for the first bunch of German former Swastika, yes, German, yeah, what's a German, anyway, the German Air Force pilots there. So, and one of my highlights there was that I gave an instrument check to their, what became the head of the German Air Force. From Germany, I was assigned to Mather Air Force Base, which was a T-29 training with the twin-engine Convair for navigation training, which meant that I would be flying at 17,000 feet and going down the Sacramento Valley and back up, and down Sacramento Valley and back up. About a 7-hour flight each day, straight and level, boring as the devil. I was frustrated with this, and snivelled the best I could, any kind of jet training I could get. We had a couple of T-birds there for weather observation, things like that. I jumped on that like a cat on a mouse. Then, but I could see that I was in training command, and training command was, for me, a dead-end job. So, along came an opportunity to be an aide for a Major General. We realized that, I realized that, okay, once you're an aide, once you're an aide, you, at the end of your tour, you get the assignment you want. Okay, that should be fine, because as soon as I was going to get through being an aide, I was going to go to fighter training, which ultimately did. It got longer than I expected, but nevertheless. So I took my F-100 training at Luke, and then was reassigned to Ramstein, Germany, where I checked out as a pilot, and there at Ramstein we were sitting on nuke bombs for as an alert for the Russian aggression. Came back from Ramstein, and that's, where do you go? From Ramstein, I went to, from Ramstein to Mather for navigation training. Then from the aide job at Montgomery, Alabama, to, I finally got my flying training at Luke, and Germany, Ramstein again, 417 Attack Fighter Squadron. We took that squadron from Germany back to Mountain Home, Idaho. At that time, I was a flight commander and semi-assistant ops. We're just getting settled, and it was time for me to go to Vietnam. I didn't take the first opportunity. I got passed over for LC for that. I hopped on the bandwagon and I got assigned, and this is kind of interesting, I got assigned to Vietnam. And so to get to Vietnam, I whirled around and was able to fly one of the last Phantoms to Korea. And that's how I got to the Far East. Then spent some time in Korea and had taken a gunny bird back to Vietnam. And doing me, I had to spend Christmas in Taiwan. So that was kind of fun. Snake School, Kenman Bay, Da Nang, back to up to Field of Choice, back to Ramstein, staff at headquarters USAFE, and then back to, in the meantime, my wife had gotten a home in Palm Springs, so I got to Victorville, commuted on the weekends back, that's a 100-mile drive from Victorville to Palm Springs. Anyway, then after that, I was reassigned to Korea as a air liaison officer, did Korea, and then came back to Mountain Home. And from Mountain Home I retired. And in the meantime, of course, my grandparents had passed away. This property was one of the lots that my grandmother had ceded to her offspring, and then where I am now is the lot that my father had. My maternal grandmother had a place on Larson Road, and after I retired, we lived in her house until we got this house built. We moved in '84, and here we are. Any questions?
What did you do in Vietnam? Did you?
Oh, in Vietnam, I was an F-4 fighter pilot.
What did the F-4s do?
The F-4 is a multitask airplane, thanks to the concept of the people in power at the time. When it was lightly loaded, it was a interceptor, and if it was loaded it down, it was an air-to-ground. It had bombs, a good load of bombs, and initially it had a Gatling gun strapped to the belly, and with the E model, the gun was self-contained. So it was a very good air-to-ground fighter as well. Did that answer your question?
Sure, sure. During any of the times you were flying, were there any occasions where something really extraordinary happened, or something that sticks in your mind?
There's nothing. I was never intercepted by a MiG or anything like that, if that's what you had in mind. One of the more interesting things, in other words, I opened, would be a night bombing attack on a truck park, and seeing those flashing lights of the aircraft at night coming back at me, kind of opened my eyes, and we were very tactfully and tactically aggressive, and nothing happened. Because they didn't get a good bead on me or my wingman.
So it seems like all this time you were in the service, quite a bit of the time you were separated from your wife.
Yeah, yeah. It's, you know, okay, going back, in 1953, I graduated from college. I joined some Masonic organizations. I had to go to a school, a field organization school that I should have taken my sophomore year, or my junior, at the end of my junior year, but I didn't. They delayed that. I took that school, and then I got my commission, and then I got married, and then got went to flying school. Okay, then we were all together until separated, and I went to F-100 training at Luke, and then because at Maxwell we had we were a family, and we're all family oriented and so on like that. So for the first 10 years of marriage, we were pretty much together the whole time. But then, except for schools, now some of the schools were fairly long, but that didn't happen until after I got my got out of my aid job. So we had 6 or 8 weeks or so, maybe even longer, for the F-100 training. We then were shipped to Germany. We brought our F-100s back from Germany to upgrade to the F-4, and that was at Tucson, at Davis-Monthan. And that school was 8 weeks or so, I'm not sure, and so we were separated there. Then, of course, the year in Vietnam was a separation, and then let's see, when we got back to Victorville, she and I separated at Victorville, and at that point I married Gail. And the side on Gail is that she's adopted. Okay, her adopting mother is my grandmother's sister. We grew up together. And so when Barbara, my first wife, I decided, okay, this is returning the sheets. Okay, well, I wanted to check out with my folks. So I got a hop out of Norton, it's just San Bernardino, and came up for Labor Day weekend. And talked to my folks about do they have any objections to my getting divorced. It's your life, kiddo, take care of it. So I did. I thought, phew, okay, well, let's go to have some fun. So as young people, Gail's adopted mother had some property at Long Beach, and we spend trips on occasion going down there. I said, well, no, let's go to Long Beach. Let's separate the whole thing. And so Mom found Gail's phone number and said, can we go down? Gail said, yes, but you're not going without me. Fine. So, and Gail brought her youngest daughter, Kathy, along, and so we just had a fine weekend. I got my hot back, and things cooled down. But so I wrote a thank you note for her hospitality. She wrote, and so I responded to her, and she wrote, and here we are.
That's good. That's a good story. Do you have anything? What made you decide to stay in instead of getting out? You know, why?
Oh, I was a lifer from the word go.
Yeah. You didn't want to go commercial flying or anything like that?
No. After I retired, interesting thing is that while I was in Korea, we were just newly married. We were going to get married. anyway, in Korea, Gail was, you know, she knew about the property and we were serious. And so she looked at a book of house plans. I don't know why, I just kind of fell in her hands at a bookstore. And she saw these plans. Well, you know, it's unique and it's a hillside. Well, what do we have here? The title was Hillside Homes. So she tore the page out and sent to me in Korea and says, is this the kind of house we want? Yes, by plans. So, plans, we got the license. When I retired then, we got looking around. Finances were a problem because I still had my youngest daughter in college. So we were pretty well thrift bound, as you might imagine. So we scattered around and were patient and so on like that, living at my grandmother's place on Larson Road. And finally we were able to get a loan. We had White do the basement pouring, and that was as far as we got with the money that we had. So it was waiting for financing and adjusting and adjusting and so forth. So finally we got things settled, got the Larsons going, and we've been happy with the Larsons. I was a third assistant gopher for the Larsons because I'd go to town for whatever they needed, take their truck if it was something. So if they could continue working without having to stop and run in town to break their work and do the shopping, so I could do that. So an interesting thing with building a house is that every Friday afternoon we'd go out to a little place, have a beer, and how goes it? So how far are we going, where are we going, and so on. And so we all mess there, and the family would come too, and just had a nice little get together with the Lush brothers and their families, and it was we had a very pleasant relationship. One of the interesting things with them, you see that it's octagonal, and there's a metal plate up there where all these beams come together. Now it took them a long time talking and measuring and looking to get that metal plate just exactly right to unite all 8 of those big beams. So building a house was unique.
And after you retired, did some of the pilots stay in touch? Is there an association or?
Yeah, we had quite a group of we call them the Firsty Tree Movers. This is from Firsty Trailbook. Now, in Germany, the roads were lined with trees. And being young folks, they tended to imbibe a bit on occasion, and it was slippery roads, and they not many, but some nailed a tree with their car. And so we named ourselves the Firsty Tree Movers, and some people were very conscientious about doing it. So we would have reunions and at least a newsletter and so on like that. So up until about 10 years ago or so, that was about the last of the newsletters. But some of the folks are still around. But do I write them? No. Do we have emails? No.
What did you do after you retired?
Not much of anything. However, at my grandmother's, my grandmother's neighbor's house, a fellow whose name I've long since forgotten, had a Massey Ferguson tractor. And he said, well, you can buy it if you want. So one of my associates here was Frank Hicks, who was a retired major out of SAC, and he lived on Otter Point. We had met, and were good friends, and so we shared. We each put in, I think it was $2,500, so $1,250 for the tractor. And so the tractor at the little place, And that's how I learned to run about a 1951 or 2 or 3 Massey Ferguson tractor. It was, anyway, so we got the thing running and looked around. Well, we had a mower deck on it, and so we, like I said, we fixed that. We carted trade and we'd mow people's fields. And not so much for the hay, we just left it lying there, but the people wanted the grass mowed as a fire retardant. So we had a bit of a business for a number of years. The profits were enough for us to take the 2 couples of us to see the Vancouver World's Fair, for example. And so we kept that going for quite a while. He moved away, and so I kept the tractor going. And one thing too is that as a member of Stillicum Masonic Lodge number 2, they have about an 11-acre cemetery, not too far away from Stillicum. And 11 acres is a big field. And we had, well, we did was we mowed that sucker. Of course, it was a 2-day project, but so that's one of the things that I did. And we mowed fields here, and then I finally sat on my butt.
That's okay too. Okay, well, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I thought we'll turn this off and then maybe take a few pictures of what you have in your man cave.
Do you have anything have I covered everything you wanted, or are there holes or passovers or anything?
It's whatever you